What if everything you thought you knew about a family was just a mask hiding the truth? What if millions in cash came and vanished almost overnight, and every argument you saw on screen was really about money, control, and survival? Tonight, we're breaking down shocking moves, secret agreements, and financial decisions that could destroy trust and relationships, and you won't believe what really happened behind closed doors. Everyone watching thought this was just another emotional disagreement, another chapter in a long-running family conflict, but the truth hiding underneath is far more unsettling. And once you start pulling on the thread, everything begins to unravel, because this was never about hurt feelings or misunderstandings. It was about power, leverage, and money. And the moment you realize that, the entire story changes. It begins with quiet conversations happening off camera, decisions being made behind closed doors, and a growing sense that something was being rushed for a reason. When one person claims they were blindsided and another insists it was just business, you have to ask why the urgency, why the secrecy, and why now? Because timing matters, and in this case, the timing could not be more suspicious. Right before a major property deal was about to close, suddenly there was pressure to sign a document, not a casual agreement, but something that would permanently limit future options, silence future claims, and protect only one side from accountability. And when that request was refused, everything shifted, because refusal meant exposure, and exposure meant risk. And risk is something people with something to hide cannot tolerate. So instead of transparency, there was deflection. Instead of accountability, there were accusations. And suddenly, the narrative became about respect and loyalty rather than the document itself. Because changing the story is often the fastest way to escape the truth. And what made it worse was the language used to justify it. Phrases about trust and family unity were thrown around, while actions told a completely different story. Because trust does not require silence. Trust does not require legal protection from your own family. And unity does not involve pressuring someone to give up their rights. And when those tactics failed, the deal went through anyway, without the protection that had been so desperately sought. And that alone tells you everything, because if it was truly unnecessary, it would never have been pushed so hard in the first place. And once the property sale was complete, the money started moving quickly, some so large they should have changed everything for the better. But instead, they seemed to disappear almost as soon as they arrived. And that is where the alarm bells really start ringing, because within months, multiple assets were liquidated. First, a home sold at a massive profit, then land that had once been described as a shared dream was quietly sold off. And when you add up the proceeds, the total reaches well over $1 million. And that kind of windfall should bring stability, relief, and long-term security, especially for people approaching a stage of life where income is no longer guaranteed. But instead of security, what followed was more debt, more borrowing, and more tension. And viewers felt it even if they could not immediately explain it, because the energy shifted, conversations became defensive, explanations stopped making sense, and financial decisions started contradicting basic logic. Because why would anyone take on new debt immediately after receiving such a large amount of cash, unless that cash was already gone? And that question sits at the center of everything we are watching now, because money leaves a trail, and even when people try to hide it, the timing always tells the story. And here, the timing is impossible to ignore. Within a short period after receiving a large payout, another loan appeared matching that exact amount. And that is not coincidence, that is replacement. And replacement only happens when something is missing, and what is missing here is liquidity. Because when people have cash, they do not need to borrow against their home. They do not turn equity into a revolving source of money, unless they are trying to maintain a lifestyle they can no longer afford. And that is where the emotional fallout begins. Because financial stress does not stay contained. It bleeds into every relationship, every conversation, every disagreement, and suddenly, long-standing bonds start to fracture. Accusations fly and old grievances resurface, not because they're new, but because stress lowers the threshold for conflict. And the pressure to control the narrative increases, because if the truth comes out, the image collapses. And for people who have built an identity around stability, leadership, and authority, that collapse is terrifying. So instead of addressing the numbers, the focus shifts to personalities. Instead of explaining decisions, blame is redirected. And instead of accountability, there is outrage. Because outrage distracts, and the audience is not blind. They see the contradictions, they hear the shifting explanations, and they notice what is not being said. And that is why speculation has exploded. Because when official stories stop adding up, people start filling in the gaps. And every new detail fuels that curiosity. Whether it is changes in spending patterns, visible upgrades, or unexplained financial maneuvers, it all points back to the same question. Where did the money go, and why was silence so important before it moved? And the deeper you dig, the clearer it becomes that this was not a single bad decision, but a pattern of choices made under pressure, choices that prioritized short-term control over long-term trust. And once that line is crossed, it is almost impossible to go back, because even if the money could be replaced, the trust cannot. And that is the real loss here, because the financial fallout is only part of the story. The bigger consequence is the erosion of relationships that once held everything together. And now every interaction feels calculated, every statement feels strategic, and every disagreement feels like it is hiding something deeper, because it is. And until that underlying issue is addressed, the conflict will continue to escalate, because unresolved financial truth has a way of surfacing whether people are ready for it or not. Once the turn became clear, the rest of the timeline takes on a disturbing clarity, because this was not a random series of events, but a cascading set of choices that compounded each other at a speed that left everyone watching both shocked and uneasy. The sale of the first property brought in life-changing profit, money that could have been used to eliminate debt, to secure a future, to breathe and plan for retirement. Instead, large portions were immediately directed toward maintaining a lifestyle that required continuous access to cash. And that is where the second property enters the story. A plotline that, on the surface, looks like standard real estate activity. But when you examine the timing, the numbers, and the motives, it reveals an entirely different reality. Because selling the land that had once symbolized a shared dream suddenly becomes urgent. The proceeds do not go towards savings or investment, or even paying down existing obligations. Instead, they are partially used to shore up the same debts that were created by the first sale. And suddenly, the narrative becomes about urgency, secrecy, and necessity. Urgency because the timing is tight, secrecy because all discussions are held behind closed doors, and necessity because without immediate access to cash, life as it has been lived could not continue. And that is where the tension escalates, because financial pressure inevitably leaks into personal interactions, and the language shifts from planning and negotiation to defensiveness, accusation, and blame shifting. Because when resources are scarce, people react instinctively to protect themselves and their immediate control. And the result is what viewers see on screen. Arguments escalating, old grievances resurfacing, alliances shifting, and the constant question of who will get paid what, when, and how. And all of it centers around the same facts, which are that large sums of money entered their lives and almost as quickly vanished. And the audience is watching and analyzing every move, because there is a trail if you know where to look, and the numbers tell a story. The first house sold for a profit that left hundreds of thousands in cash, and yet within months, there was a second mortgage taken out for an identical amount, which is a pattern that cannot be ignored. It points to money being used and exhausted faster than it was coming in, and that is why speculation is rampant, and why every comment thread, every online forum is filled with theories, because when the official explanation is inconsistent and the numbers do not add up, the mind naturally tries tries to reconcile the discrepancy. And in this case, the possible explanations range from overspending to preparation for anticipated legal issues to secret investments that did not succeed. And every theory feels plausible because none of the official explanations account for the sequence of events, the speed of the transactions, or the subsequent borrowing. And that is why this story keeps looping back on itself, because every time you think you understand it, a new detail emerges, a new pattern appears, a new inconsistency comes to light, and the suspense builds, and the audience remains hooked because there is always the question of what will happen next, who will confront who, what financial decision will trigger the next emotional response, and how far will the cycle of borrowing and spending continue before it collapses completely. And what makes it even more intense is the way relationships are affected, because the financial stress acts like a pressure cooker. It amplifies disagreements, it exposes hidden resentments, it shifts alliances, and suddenly, long-standing bonds are tested, not in private, but in full view of a public that has invested years following their story. And every argument, every tearful confessional suddenly takes on additional meaning because it is no longer just emotional. It is evidence of underlying financial strain, and the audience cannot help but analyze body language, tone of voice, and even set design for clues, because anything could be a hint to the truth. And then there is the revolving nature of the home equity line of credit, the fact that the loan allows repeated withdrawals over decades, creating a permanent source of access to cash. And that is alarming because it is not a standard financial strategy. It is not about investment, it is about liquidity. It is about maintaining access to money when income may no longer be reliable. And when you understand that the entire behavior on screen, the urgency, the secrecy, the conflict, starts to make sense, because it is not just drama, it is a survival mechanism being enacted in real time. And once you see it through that lens, you cannot unsee it. And that is why the tension feels so palpable, why each episode feels more intense than the last, why the comment sections are ablaze with speculation, because everyone senses the underlying fear that drives every choice. And when fear is combined with high-stakes financial decisions, the consequences are unavoidable, because the money is gone and the debt remains and relationships are strained, and the only constant is the cycle of borrowing and spending that continues unchecked. And the audience cannot look away, because the loop of cause and effect repeats every week, every scene, every confession, revealing just how precarious everything really is. And what makes it even more suspenseful is the uncertainty, because no one knows the exact extent of financial exposure, what legal claims may be pending, what undisclosed obligations exist. And until that information is revealed, every decision on screen is loaded with potential consequences. Every conversation is a risk, and every interaction carries the weight of what has already happened and what could happen next. And that is why this story is so compelling, because it is more than reality television. It is a real-time case study of financial mismanagement, human behavior under pressure, and the fragility of relationships when money is involved. And as long as the audience continues to watch and analyze and debate the choices made, they are drawn deeper into the loop of suspense. Because with every revelation, every unexplained transaction, every defensive statement, the cycle continues. And the need to see what happens next becomes irresistible. And once you understand the pattern, once you see the choices and the consequences, you realize that the financial decisions were never isolated. They were part of a continuous chain, each one feeding into the next, each one amplifying the tension, each one ensuring that viewers cannot turn away. And as the story unfolds, there is always the underlying question of sustainability. How long can this continue? What will break first? The finances, the relationships, or the carefully maintained image? And one thing is certain, this story is far from over, and the consequences are only just beginning.